Your shortcuts nearly killed us both.
Huh. Jimmy's been doing this work for 20 years.
My wife was screaming at me through the smoke, and for the first time in 15 years of marriage, I actually listened to what she was saying. "This is your fault, Evan. Your goddamn shortcuts nearly killed us both." The kitchen was a black skeleton of what used to be our dream renovation. Smoke still curled from the charred remains of custom cabinets that cost more than my car. The fire department had just left, and Naomi stood in our driveway wearing my old college sweatshirt, her usually perfect hair singed at the ends. "I approved the electrical work myself," I said, coughing smoke from my lungs. Jimmy Kowalski's crew has been doing residential for 20 years. Jimmy Kowalski's an alcoholic who couldn't wire a lamp correctly. Naomi's voice carried that tone I'd grown accustomed to, the one that made me feel like I was disappointing her, just by existing. "But you wouldn't know that because you never actually inspect anything. You just rubber stamp whatever your drinking buddies hand you." She wasn't entirely wrong. As Evanston's senior building inspector, I did have relationships with most of the contractors in town. It made the job easier when everyone trusted each other. But Jimmy's work had always been solid. The next morning, my phone rang at 6 a.m. My supervisor, David Kellerman, sounded tired. "Evan, we need to talk. Can you come in early?" 20 minutes later, I sat across from David's desk while he avoided eye contact. The homeowner from last month's Oak Street project filed a formal complaint. Claims you approved substandard foundation work that's now causing structural issues. I knew the house. Everything had looked fine during inspection. "David, I checked that foundation twice. The concrete was properly cured. Rebar placement was to code. The contractor is saying you were drinking during the inspection. Says he has witnesses." The room felt suddenly cold. "That's impossible. I don't drink on the job, ever. I believe you, Evan. But with the fire at your place making local news and now this complaint," David sighed, "I have to suspend you pending investigation. 2 weeks with pay." Let this blow over. I drove home in a daze. 2 complaints in 2 days felt like more than coincidence, but I couldn't piece together why anyone would want to sabotage me. I was nobody special, just a guy who made sure buildings were safe before people lived in them. At the hospital that afternoon, they kept me for smoke inhalation observation. Naomi sat in the plastic chair beside my bed, scrolling through her phone. "Lynn and Caleb want to have us over for dinner tomorrow," she said without looking up. I told them we'd love to come. Lynn and Caleb Morrison were Naomi's closest friends from the private school where she worked as an administrator. They lived in one of those new McMansions near the lake and made sure everyone knew it. "I might not be great company," I said. "The suspension is stressing me out. It's probably for the best. Maybe you can use the time to figure out what went wrong." She still wasn't looking at me. "I'm going to get coffee. Want anything?" I shook my head and closed my eyes. The steady beep of monitors was almost soothing after the chaos of the morning. That's when I heard her phone ring in her purse. "Hey, babe," Naomi's voice drifted from the hallway. "No, he's sleeping. The doctor says he'll be fine." My eyes opened. In 15 years, she'd never called me babe. I was honey on good days, Evan most of the time. I know it's complicated, but we have to be careful. Especially now with everything that's happening. A pause. "I miss you too." When she returned 5 minutes later with coffee, I pretended to be asleep. That night, after they discharged me, I waited until Naomi was in the shower. Her phone sat on the nightstand, charging. I'd never snooped before, had never felt the need to. But that conversation at the hospital had planted something cold in my chest. Her passcode was our anniversary date. The voicemail folder showed 3 new messages, all from someone named Trent. First message: "Can't wait to see you tomorrow night. The Marriott downtown, room 412. I booked it under Johnson, like always." Second message: "Just talked to my lawyer about the business loan. Everything's moving forward." Your husband's signature looked perfect on the application. Third message: "Love you, baby. Soon we won't have to hide anymore." I set the phone down carefully, exactly where I'd found it. The shower was still running. Naomi was humming something I didn't recognize. For the next hour, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, processing what I'd heard. My wife was cheating, that much was clear. But there was something about a business loan and my signature that made my stomach turn. I'd never signed any business loan documents. The next morning, Naomi left early for work. She kissed my forehead and told me to rest. that everything would work out. Her concern felt practiced, like she'd rehearsed it. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner, then called my friend Tommy Rodriguez from high school. He worked at First National Bank downtown. Evan, heard about the house fire on the news. You guys okay? We're fine, Tommy. Listen, I need a favor. Can you check if there are any business loans in my name? I'm worried someone might be using my identity. Sure thing. Give me your social and I'll run it through the system. 10 minutes later, he called back. You've got a business loan for $85,000. Approved last month for something called N&T Property Solutions, LLC. Ring any bells? N&T, Naomi, and Trent. Yeah, I remember now. Thanks, Tommy. I hung up and sat in my burned-out kitchen, trying to understand how my wife had managed to forge my signature on a loan I'd never seen. And more importantly, why she needed $85,000 for a business I'd never heard of. The suspension gave me something I hadn't had in years. Time. Time to think. Time to investigate. Time to plan. I started with Trent. A quick Google search revealed Trent Weathers, real estate investor and property flipper. His company website showed dozens of before and after photos of renovated homes. He was handsome in that generic way that women seem to love. Square jaw, perfect teeth, expensive suits. His address was listed as a condo downtown, but property records showed he owned several rental properties around the city. One of them was only 3 blocks from the private school where Naomi worked. I drove past it that afternoon, a small apartment building well-maintained, the kind of place someone might use for discreet meetings. That evening, Naomi announced she was going to Lynn and Caleb's for dinner after all. You should come, she said, but her tone suggested she hoped I wouldn't. I'm not feeling up to it. Tell them I said thanks for the invitation. She kissed my cheek. I probably won't be back until late. Lynn wants to discuss some fundraising ideas for the school. After she left, I followed her. She drove straight to the downtown Marriott. I parked across the street and watched her walk through the lobby like she owned the place. Confident, happy, nothing like the stressed, concerned wife she'd been playing at home. An hour later, I was still sitting in my car when Trent Weathers walked out of the hotel. I recognized him from his website photos, but seeing him in person was different. He moved like someone who'd never been told no, never had a door slammed in his face. He got into a silver BMW and drove away. Naomi didn't come out for another 2 hours. Over the next few days, I began to understand the scope of what they were doing. The business loan wasn't just about money. It was about setting up a legitimate company that could buy and flip properties. Properties that I, as a building inspector, would approve for occupancy. They were using my position and my reputation to create their own little real estate empire. I should have been angry. Any normal person would have confronted them, demanded explanations, threatened divorce. But as I sat in my home office, surrounded by documents and photos and evidence of their betrayal, I felt something else entirely. Clarity. For 15 years, I'd been the reliable one, the steady one, the one who went to work every day and came home every night and never made waves. Naomi had treated me like furniture, useful but ultimately invisible. Well, furniture could surprise you sometimes. I called in sick to work the next day and drove to Chicago. There was a demolition company on the south side that I'd worked with on several commercial projects. The owner, Marcus Webb, owed me a favor from when I'd fast-tracked permits for his warehouse renovation. Evan, what brings you to my neck of the woods? I need a job, Marcus. Night work. Cash under the table. He raised an eyebrow. You in some kind of trouble? Let's just say I need to keep busy while I figure some things out. Marcus studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. Can you swing a sledgehammer? I think I can manage. That night, I became Jude Collins. It was my middle name and my mother's maiden name, close enough to feel natural when someone called it out. The work was brutal, tearing down walls, removing fixtures, loading debris into dumpsters. But it felt good to destroy things with my hands instead of just inspecting them. More importantly, it gave me access to demolition equipment and a network of contractors who worked in the gray areas of construction. People who understood that sometimes the official way wasn't the only way. After a week of night shifts, I had a plan. The first step was evidence. I needed proof of Naomi's affair that would hold up in court, and I needed to understand exactly how she'd forged my signature on the loan documents. I hired a private investigator named Sarah Chen, a former police detective who specialized in infidelity cases. She was expensive, but Tommy at the bank had mentioned that the business loan included a generous cash advance. Technically, it was my money they were stealing. Sarah's report arrived 5 days later, photos of Naomi and Trent at restaurants, hotels, and the apartment building I'd found. Financial records showing money transfers between their personal accounts and the LLC. Most importantly, copies of the loan application with my forged signature. The signature was good, really good. Someone had practiced, but it wasn't perfect. I'd broken my wrist in high school, and ever since, I'd had a slight tremor when writing certain letters. The forged signature was too smooth, too confident. With Sarah's evidence in hand, I moved to phase 2. I created my own shell company, EC. Property Management. It sounded generic enough to blend in with hundreds of similar LLCs, but the initials were mine. I used it to quietly buy a small apartment building that was going into foreclosure. The building happened to be owned by Trent Weathers. He'd over-leveraged himself on too many properties, and the market downturn was catching up with him. My purchase price was exactly enough to cover his outstanding mortgage, leaving him with nothing. But he didn't know who'd bought it. The second part of Phase 2 involved Naomi's job. As an administrator at Hillbrook Academy, she had access to the school's financials and donor lists. According to Sarah's investigation, Naomi had been skimming money from the annual fundraising gala for the past 2 years. Nothing dramatic, just enough to supplement the business loan and pay for her hotel meetings with Trent. I reported the discrepancies to the school board anonymously, providing detailed documentation of every transaction. 3 days later, Naomi came home in tears. "They're investigating the fundraising accounts," she said, collapsing onto our couch. "Someone's claiming there are irregularities." I wrapped my arms around her and made sympathetic noises, while inside I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding," I said. "You've always been careful with money." She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "What if they fire me, Evan? What if people think I'm a thief?" "Hey," I lifted her chin with my finger. "We'll get through this together." "We always do." She seemed to believe me. That night, for the first time in months, she initiated Zex. It was desperate and passionate, like she was trying to prove something to herself. Afterward, while she slept, I lay awake, planning Phase 3. The key to destroying someone completely isn't to attack them directly. It's to remove their support system piece by piece until they're standing alone. Naomi's biggest supporters were Lynn and Caleb Morrison. They'd been her friends since college, her confidants, her enablers. Every terrible decision she'd made over the past year had been validated by their approval. I started with Caleb's construction company. Morrison Development specialized in high-end residential projects, the kind of houses where money was no object. They cut corners where they thought no one would notice, using cheaper materials, skipping inspections, paying off the right people. As a building inspector, I'd noticed irregularities in several of their recent projects. I'd planned to address them quietly, the way I always did, with a phone call and an understanding that things would be fixed. Instead, I documented everything. Every code violation, every shortcut, every bribe attempt. Then I sent detailed reports to the State Licensing Board, the Better Business Bureau, and 3 local news stations. The story broke on a Thursday. Local developer accused of widespread safety violations. By Friday, Morrison Development had lost 2 major contracts and was facing a criminal investigation. That weekend, Naomi got a tearful call from Lynn. "Caleb's talking about bankruptcy," Lynn sobbed into the phone. "He says someone's been documenting their work for months, building a case against them." "Who would do something like that?" Naomi asked. I looked up from my newspaper. "Probably someone who got screwed by shoddy construction. You know how vindictive people can be when they lose money." The irony wasn't lost on me. With the Morrisons distracted by their own problems, I moved to the final phase of Naomi's destruction. The annual Hillbrook Academy fundraising gala was 3 weeks away. It was Naomi's biggest event of the year, the culmination of months of planning and coordination. Even with the investigation hanging over her head, she was determined to make it perfect. "If I can pull off an amazing gala, it'll prove I'm innocent," she told me over breakfast. "Show everyone that I care about the school." I nodded supportively while I mentally reviewed the timeline for her complete humiliation. 2 days before the gala, I received a call from Trent Weathers. Is this Evan Colby? Speaking. This is Trent Weathers from TW Properties. I understand you're a building inspector. My pulse quickened, but I kept my voice neutral. That's right. I'm having some issues with a property I'm trying to flip. The current inspector is being difficult. I was wondering if you might be able to take a look, maybe expedite the approval process. I'd be happy to pay a consultation fee. He was trying to bribe me. The arrogance was breathtaking. I'm sorry, Mr. Weathers, but I'm currently on administrative leave. You'll need to work with the assigned inspector. Administrative leave? What for? Personal matters. I'm sure you understand. There was a pause. Actually, I might know someone who could help with your situation. My girlfriend works in education administration. She has connections throughout the city. My grip tightened on the phone. He was offering to have Naomi help me get my job back, using her influence to solve a problem he didn't know he'd created. That's very generous, I said. But I prefer to handle these things myself. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, processing the conversation. Trent had no idea who I was, despite sleeping with my wife for months. To him, I was just another small-town bureaucrat who could be bought or threatened as needed. The oversight was about to cost him everything. The night of the gala, I put on my best suit and drove to the Hillbrook Academy Gymnasium. Naomi had left early to oversee final preparations, kissing me goodbye and promising to save me a dance. The gymnasium had been transformed into something resembling a high-end banquet hall. Round tables with white linens, centerpieces with fresh flowers, a small stage for speeches and awards. About 200 people mingled with drinks, the kind of crowd that valued appearance over substance. I found Naomi near the registration table, wearing a black dress I'd never seen before. She looked beautiful and confident, every inch the successful professional woman she wanted people to see. "You made it," she hugged me tightly. "I was starting to worry you'd changed your mind. Wouldn't miss it for the world." The evening progressed predictably. Dinner, speeches, a silent auction for overpriced vacation packages and art pieces. Naomi was in her element, working the room, making sure every detail was perfect. At 9 o'clock, they dimmed the lights for the presentation of the school's annual report. A large screen descended from the ceiling, and the headmaster began clicking through slides showing enrollment numbers, test scores, and budget allocations. That's when I made my move. During my weeks of demolition work, I'd learned a lot about electronic systems, including how to override projection equipment with a wireless signal. The slides of smiling children and academic achievements suddenly changed. Bank statements appeared on the screen. Account numbers, transaction dates, amounts transferred, all showing money moving from the Hillbrook Academy fundraising account to Naomi's personal checking account. The room went silent. "I'm sorry," the headmaster stammered, frantically pressing buttons on his remote. "We seem to be having technical difficulties." But the documents kept coming. Copies of checks, wire transfer confirmations, even screenshots of text messages between Naomi and someone identified only as T, discussing how to hide the missing money. I watched Naomi's face go white as she realized what was happening. Her eyes darted around the room, looking for someone to blame, someone to fix this disaster. Her gaze found mine. For a moment, we stared at each other across the crowded gymnasium. In her expression, I saw the exact moment she understood that her boring, reliable husband had just destroyed her life in front of everyone she'd wanted to impress. I smiled and raised my wine glass in a small toast. The projection screen finally went dark, but the damage was done. Conversations buzzed with shock and speculation. Parents demanded explanations. Board members huddled in urgent discussions. Naomi pushed through the crowd toward me, her face a mask of fury and panic. "We need to talk," she hissed. "Right now." I followed her out of the gymnasium into an empty hallway. The moment we were alone, she grabbed my arm. "What did you do?" "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me, Evan. Those documents, that presentation, were probably provided by whoever's been investigating the financial irregularities. You know, the same investigation that's been going on for weeks." She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "You did this. Somehow, you orchestrated all of this." I gently removed her hand from my arm. "Naomi, you're upset. You're not thinking clearly. The building suspension, the fire, Morrison development, and now this. It's all connected, isn't it? That's quite a conspiracy theory." Her breathing was becoming rapid and shallow. "How long have you known?" "Known what?" "About Trent. about the business, about everything. I considered lying, maintaining the pretense for a little longer. But looking at her face, the desperation, the fear, the dawning realization that she'd underestimated me completely, I decided the truth would hurt more. Since the night in the hospital, when you called him babe in the hallway, the color drained from her face. That was weeks ago. 6 weeks, 2 days. And you've been planning this the whole time? Planning what? I've been trying to understand why my wife forged my signature on a business loan, stole money from her employer, and has been sleeping with a real estate developer in downtown hotels. She started to speak, then stopped, realizing that any explanation would only make things worse. What do you want? She asked finally. I want you to understand something, Naomi. For 15 years, you've treated me like I was invisible. Like I was too stupid to notice when you were lying, too weak to do anything about it if I did notice. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. But invisible people see everything, and weak people have nothing left to lose. The sound of approaching sirens cut through the night air. Someone had called the police about the financial documents. I should go, I said. I'm sure you'll want to explain everything to the officers. And to the reporters, who are probably on their way. I started walking toward the parking lot, then turned back. Oh, and Naomi? You might want to call Trent. He's going to need a good lawyer. I drove home slowly, taking the long way through downtown. The streets were quiet except for emergency vehicles heading toward the school. At home, I poured myself a scotch and sat in my burned-out kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of our old life. Tomorrow, Naomi would be arrested. The business loan would be exposed as fraud. Trent would discover that his properties had been systematically undermined, and his investors were demanding immediate repayment of loans he couldn't cover. But tonight, I just sat in the darkness and waited. Naomi came home at 2 a.m. I heard her car in the driveway, her key in the lock, her footsteps on the hardwood floor. She found me in the kitchen. They arrested me, she said quietly. Posted bail with my mother's jewelry. I'm sorry to hear that. She sat down across from me, and for a moment we were just two people who'd shared 15 years of marriage, sitting in the ruins of everything they'd built together. Was any of it real? She asked. Our marriage, our plans, the life we were building? I thought it was, right up until I realized you'd been building a different life with someone else. I never meant for things to go this far. Which things? The affair, the theft, or the fraud? She flinched. All of it. I felt trapped, Evan, like I was suffocating in this little life we'd created. So you decided to destroy it. I thought I could have both. Keep you as my safety net while I explored something more exciting. I finished my scotch and stood up. Well, now you can explore whatever you want, just not with my money or my name. Where are you going? To bed. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day. Evan, wait. She stood up, reaching for me. Can we try to work this out, go to counseling, start over? I looked at her face, still beautiful, still desperate, and felt nothing but exhaustion. Naomi, 3 hours ago, you were sleeping with another man. 2 months ago, you forged my signature to steal $85,000. Last week, you were stealing from Children's Education Fund. There's nothing left to work out. She started crying then, the ugly kind of crying that comes from genuine despair. Please, she whispered. I'll do anything. I'll pay back the money, end things with Trent, quit my job. You don't have a job. And Trent won't be available for much longer. What do you mean? I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt in months. You'll find out tomorrow. The next morning, I woke to find Naomi gone. Her clothes were missing from the closet, her jewelry box empty, her car no longer in the driveway. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. I'm staying with my sister in Denver until this gets resolved. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce proceedings. I crumpled up the note and threw it away. Then I made coffee and sat down to read the morning news on my laptop. The lead story was about Trent Weathers. He'd been arrested during a pre-dawn raid on his condo. The charges included tax evasion, fraud, and money laundering. Apparently, the business he'd created with Naomi was just one of several shell companies he'd been using to hide income and inflate property values. The story mentioned an unnamed accomplice who'd been arrested the previous evening in connection with the scheme. My phone rang. It was Marcus from the demolition company. Jude! You see the news this morning? About the real estate developer? Yeah, crazy stuff. Turns out he owes money to some very serious people. Word is they're not happy about losing their investment. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate for him, maybe. But good news for guys like us. His properties are going to auction next week. You interested in bidding on anything? I thought about it. Trent's portfolio included some nice residential properties, the kind of places that would rent well to young professionals. Send me the list, I said. I might know some investors who'd be interested. After I hung up, I drove to the bank to see Tommy. Evan, how are you holding up? Saw the news about your wife? I'm doing okay, considering. Actually, I wanted to ask about business loans. For legitimate businesses this time? Tommy laughed. What did you have in mind? Property management. There are going to be some foreclosed properties available soon, and I think there's money to be made buying them cheap and fixing them up. Well, with your background in building inspection, you'd certainly know what to look for. Exactly. We spent an hour going over loan applications and qualification requirements. By the time I left, I had pre-approval for $200,000 in business credit, more than enough to buy several of Trent's properties at auction prices. That afternoon, I drove out to one of the apartment buildings I was considering bidding on. It was a solid structure, well-maintained, in a good neighborhood, the kind of property that would generate steady rental income for years. As I walked around the building, taking notes on needed repairs and improvements, a silver BMW pulled up to the curb. Trent Weathers got out of the car. He looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled and stained. There was a bandage on his left hand and what looked like the beginning of a black eye. He saw me and walked over. Are you the building inspector? I'm a potential buyer, I said, looking at the property for investment purposes. Investment? He laughed bitterly. You know this place is tied up in legal proceedings, right? Criminal investigation. I heard something about that. Bad situation. Bad doesn't begin to cover it. He ran his uninjured hand through his hair. I built something real here. Multiple properties, legitimate business, steady income. And some vindictive bastard destroyed it all because of a grudge. A grudge? Had to be. The timing was too perfect, the attacks too coordinated. Someone spent months planning this. I nodded sympathetically. Any idea who might have done something like that? Could be anyone. Disgruntled contractor, jealous competitor, pissed off tenant. In this business, you make enemies. What about personal enemies? Ex-girlfriends, angry husbands. He gave me a sharp look. What kind of question is that? Just thinking about motivation. Someone who'd go to this much trouble probably had personal reasons. Trent stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him trying to place my face, figure out why I seemed familiar. Have we met before? I don't think so. I'm pretty forgettable. No, there's something... He snapped his fingers. You called me a few weeks ago about an inspection issue. Did I? I make a lot of calls. Yeah, you did. Said you were on administrative leave. His eyes narrowed. What did you say your name was? I didn't, but it's Evan Colby. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. His face went white, then red, then white again. You're Naomi's husband. That's right. You son of a witch. He stepped closer, his hands clenching into fists. You destroyed my life. Actually, I think you did that yourself when you decided to sleep with my wife and steal my money. It wasn't stealing. It was a business loan, with a forged signature. Naomi said you'd agreed to it. Naomi lied to you, just like she lied to me. He swung at me then, a clumsy right hook that I saw coming from a mile away. I stepped back and let him stumble past me. I wouldn't do that if I were you, I said. Assault charges on top of fraud and tax evasion won't help your legal situation. You think you're so smart, he snarled. You think you've won? I don't think anything. I know that my wife is facing criminal charges. You're about to lose everything you own, and I'm going to buy your properties for pennies on the dollar. This isn't over. Yes, it is. I walked back to my car, leaving him standing in the parking. A lot of what used to be his investment property. 3 weeks later, I attended the auction of Trent's real estate portfolio. The courthouse steps were crowded with investors, bargain hunters, and curious onlookers. Trent himself was notably absent. He was in federal custody awaiting trial, I bought 4 properties for a total of $68,000. All of them were solid investments that would generate steady rental income once I completed basic repairs and updates. After the auction, I drove to my new favorite restaurant, a little diner on the edge of town that served great coffee and minded their own business. The waitress, Jenny, knew me by now. I'd been coming in every morning since Naomi left. "The usual?" she asked. "Actually, make it a celebration breakfast today. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, the works." "Good news?" "You could say that." I ate slowly, savoring the food and the quiet satisfaction of a plan executed perfectly. Through the window, I could see the city waking up. People heading to work, children walking to school, the ordinary rhythm of life continuing as it always did. Somewhere in Denver, Naomi was probably meeting with lawyers, trying to figure out how to minimize her jail time. Somewhere in Federal Holding, Trent was learning what happened to pretty boys who owed money to the wrong people. And I was here, eating breakfast and planning my next property purchase. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Lynn Morrison. "Heard about Naomi's arrest. So sorry, Evan. If you need anything, please let us know." I deleted the message without responding. The Morrisons were dealing with their own legal troubles now. Caleb's construction company was facing multiple lawsuits, and Lynn was working double shifts at a department store to help pay their lawyers. Another text came in, this one from my supervisor, David. "Investigation complete. You're cleared to return to work Monday. Welcome back." I finished my breakfast and left a generous tip for Jenny. Outside, the morning air was crisp and clean, full of possibilities. I had 4 properties to renovate, a job to return to, and a new understanding of exactly what I was capable of when pushed to my limits. For 15 years, I'd been the reliable one, the invisible one, the one who never made waves. Turns out, still waters run deeper than anyone imagined. I drove home to my empty house, empty but not lonely. For the first time in years, I had plans that were entirely my own, goals that didn't depend on anyone else's approval or cooperation. That evening, I sat in my rebuilt kitchen with a glass of wine and a stack of renovation estimates. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from its foundation. At 9 o'clock, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a young woman in a business suit holding a briefcase. "Mr. Colby, I'm Detective Sarah Martinez with the Financial Crimes Unit. Could I speak with you for a few minutes?" I opened the door. "Of course." "Come in." She declined my offer of coffee and got straight to business. "We're investigating the financial fraud case involving your wife and Mr. Weathers. I understand you were the victim of identity theft in connection with their business loan." "That's correct. I have to ask, did you have any knowledge of their business activities before the loan was discovered?" "None whatsoever. I was completely blindsided by the whole thing." She made notes in a small notebook. "The evidence suggests a high level of sophistication in the fraud scheme. Coordinated attacks on multiple fronts, perfect timing, inside knowledge of various business and legal processes. I suppose criminals can be quite clever when they want to be." "Indeed. The thing is, someone with extensive knowledge of construction, real estate, and municipal processes would have been perfectly positioned to orchestrate something like this." I met her eyes steadily. "Are you suggesting I was involved in my own victimization?" "I'm not suggesting anything, just exploring all possibilities. I was suspended from my job when this started. I had no access to city records or municipal processes." "True. But you had 15 years of experience and relationships in the industry." "Detective Martinez, I'm not sure what you're implying, but I was the victim here. My wife forged my signature, stole my identity, and used my professional reputation to defraud a bank. If I'd known about any of it, don't you think I would have stopped it?" She studied my face for a long moment, then closed her notebook. "You're right, of course. Sometimes, in these complex cases, I look for patterns that aren't really there. I understand. You're just doing your job." After she left, I poured another glass of wine and sat back down with my renovation plans. The detective's visit was a reminder that I needed to be careful, even in victory. 2 months later, Naomi's trial began. I attended every day, sitting in the back row of the courtroom gallery. It wasn't revenge. I'd already had that. It was curiosity. I wanted to see how she would handle being exposed, whether she would take responsibility or continue lying until the end. She chose lying. On the witness stand, Naomi painted herself as a victim of Trent's manipulation. She claimed he'd pressured her into the affair, convinced her that stealing from the school was a temporary loan, forged my signature without her knowledge. Her performance was compelling. She cried at the right moments, showed appropriate remorse, spoke about how much she regretted betraying her husband's trust. The prosecutor wasn't buying it. Miss Colby, you're asking this jury to believe that you engaged in a sexual affair with Mr. Weathers for 6 months without realizing he was using you to commit fraud? I was emotionally vulnerable. He took advantage of that. And the money you transferred from the school's fundraising account, that was also Mr. Weathers' idea? He said it was a short-term loan, that we'd pay it back with interest once the business was profitable. But you never documented these supposed loan agreements, never told anyone at the school about them, never mentioned them to your husband. Naomi's composure started to crack. I thought I was protecting Evan. I didn't want him to worry about our finances. Protecting him by forging his signature on an $85,000 loan? I never forged anything. Trent must have done that. The prosecutor walked to the evidence table and picked up a stack of documents. These are handwriting samples, Miss Colby. Bank signature cards, mortgage documents, tax returns. All signed by your husband over the past 5 years. He handed her a magnifying glass. Now, look at the signature on the business loan application. Notice anything different? Naomi studied the documents for a long time. When she looked up, her face was pale. The loan signature is too smooth, she admitted quietly. Evan's real signature has a slight tremor in the E and the C. This one doesn't. And yet, you testified that you never forged your husband's signature. I must have forgotten. Forgotten forging a signature on an $85,000 loan? The jury convicted her on all counts. 3 years in federal prison, plus restitution and fines. Trent got 7 years. After the sentencing, I walked out of the courthouse into bright afternoon sunlight. The whole ordeal was finally over. Naomi would serve her time, Trent would serve his, and I would continue building my new life. As I reached my car, someone called my name. Evan! I turned to see Lynn Morrison hurrying across the parking lot. She looked older than her 43 years, stressed and worn down by months of legal troubles. I wanted to talk to you before you left. What about? About what really happened here. I kept my expression neutral. I'm not sure what you mean. Come on, Evan. I've known you for 10 years. You're not the vindictive type. This whole thing, the timing, the coordination, the way every aspect of their lives fell apart simultaneously. It's too perfect to be coincidence. Sometimes coincidences happen. Not like this. Someone orchestrated this. Someone with inside knowledge and outside connections. Someone who understood exactly how to destroy them both. I leaned against my car, studying her face. Let's say you're right. Let's say someone did plan all of this. What would you want to do about it? I'd want to know why. You'd want to know why someone might be angry that their wife was stealing money and sleeping with another man? Not that. I mean, why you waited. Why you let it play out instead of just confronting them. It was a fair question. I thought about it for a moment. Have you ever been dismissed, Lynn? Really dismissed? Not just ignored, but treated like you're too stupid to understand what's happening right in front of you? She nodded slowly. With Caleb's business, for years I knew he was cutting corners, taking shortcuts. When I tried to talk to him about it, he'd pat my head and tell me not to worry about things I didn't understand. And how did that make you feel? Like I was invisible. Like my opinions didn't matter. Now imagine that feeling lasted for 15 years. Imagine realizing that your partner thought so little of you that they believed they could steal your identity, forge your signature, and conduct an affair right under your nose without you ever noticing. Lynn's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Evan. I'm sorry she made you feel that way. I'm not looking for apologies. I'm just explaining why someone might choose a more comprehensive response to that kind of betrayal. And now? Now I'm going home to work on my rental properties. I've got tenants moving in next week, and I want everything to be perfect. I got in my car and drove away, leaving Lynn standing in the courthouse parking lot. 6 months later, I was having breakfast at Jenny's diner when she sat down across from me. Mind if I join you? Not at all. Jenny was in her early 30s, divorced, with a 10-year-old daughter. She'd been working at the diner for 3 years, saving money to go back to school. We'd been talking more over the past few months. Nothing romantic, just two people who'd found themselves starting over. I have news, she said. I got accepted to the nursing program at the community college. That's fantastic. When do you start? Fall semester, which means I'll need to cut back to part-time here. You'll do great. You're good with people. She smiled. I was wondering, would you like to have dinner sometime? Somewhere that's not here, where I'm not serving you coffee? I thought about it. The idea of dating again felt strange after everything that had happened. But Jenny was kind, straightforward, uncomplicated. She didn't seem like the type of person who would forge signatures or steal from children. I'd like that, I said. Saturday night? It's a date. After she left, I sat finishing my breakfast and thinking about the future. In a year, Naomi would be eligible for parole. Trent would be in prison for at least 5 more years after that. The Morrisons had divorced and Caleb had moved to Arizona to work for his brother's construction company. And I was here, building something new from the ashes of my old life. My phone buzzed with a text from one of my tenants, a leaky faucet in Unit 3B. I finished my coffee, left money on the table, and headed out to take care of it. As I drove through the city, I passed the private school where Naomi used to work. They'd hired a new administrator, a woman in her 50s who seemed competent and honest. The fundraising investigation had led to new financial controls and oversight procedures. I passed the hotel where Naomi and Trent used to meet. The Marriott had been sold to a different chain and renovated. New management, new rooms, new memories being made by new people. At the apartment building, I spent an hour fixing the faucet and checking on the other units. Everything was in good repair, tenants were happy, rent was coming in on time. It wasn't exciting work, but it was honest and profitable. That evening, I sat in my renovated kitchen reading property listings and planning my next investment. The house felt like home again, filled with my own choices and priorities instead of compromises and accommodations. At 10 o'clock, I heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, I saw a taxi pulling away. A woman with a suitcase stood on my front porch, Naomi. She looked older, thinner, worn down by prison life. Her clothes were cheap and ill-fitting. Her hair was shorter, grayer. But her eyes still held that familiar mix of determination and entitlement. I opened the door before she could knock. Hello, Evan. You're early. I thought you had another 8 months. Good behavior. Time off for completing education programs. We stood there for a moment, two people who'd once promised to love each other forever, now separated by everything that had happened between us. Can I come in? This isn't your home anymore, Naomi. I know, I need to talk to you. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let her enter. She looked around the renovated kitchen, taking in the new appliances, fresh paint, modern fixtures. It looks good. Different, but good. What do you want? I want to explain, to apologize, to see if there's any way we can... There isn't. You don't even know what I was going to say. You were going to ask if we could work things out, start over, put the past behind us. I poured myself a glass of water. The answer is no. She sat down at the kitchen table without being invited. I've had 2 years to think about what I did, to understand how much I hurt you. And what conclusion did you reach? That I was selfish and stupid and cruel. That I took you for granted, that I threw away the best thing in my life for something that was never real. Those are words, Naomi, just words. I know I can't undo what I did. But maybe I can prove that I've changed. I sat down across from her, studying her face. Prison had aged her, but it hadn't broken her spirit. She still believed she could talk her way out of anything. How would you prove that? By being the wife I should have been all along. By putting our marriage first, by earning back your trust. Our marriage ended the night you called Trent babe in the hospital hallway. She flinched. You remember that? I remember everything. Even the good times, our wedding day, buying this house, talking about having children, especially those, because they make the betrayal worse. Tears started flowing down her cheeks. Real ones this time, not the practice performance from her trial. I'm sorry, Evan. I'm so ducking sorry. I know you have every right to hate me. But please, can you find any forgiveness? Any compassion? I watched her cry and felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no pity, just emptiness where love used to be. Where are you staying? I don't know yet. I was hoping maybe I could stay here for a few days just until I figure things out. No. Evan, please. I don't have anywhere else to go. That's not my problem anymore. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. You really hate me that much? I don't hate you, Naomi. I just don't care about you anymore. The words hit her like a physical blow. She'd been prepared for anger, for accusations, for demands, for explanations. She hadn't been prepared for indifference. So that's it? 15 years of marriage, and now I'm nothing to you. You made that choice when you decided to build a secret life with another man. What about forgiveness? What about second chances? I gave you 15 years of chances. You used every one of them to lie to me. She stood up, steadying herself on the table. You've become someone I don't recognize. I've become someone who doesn't accept being treated like garbage. If that seems strange to you, it's because you never knew me at all. The man I married would never be this cold. The man you married was a fool who believed his wife loved him. That man died in a hospital hallway 2 years ago. She stared at me for a long moment, then picked up her suitcase. I'll get a motel room. But this isn't over, Evan. I'm not giving up on us. There is no us. After she left, I deadbolted the door and drew the curtains. Then I called my lawyer to discuss getting a restraining order. 3 days later, I was at the diner when Jenny sat down with a concerned expression. Someone was asking about you yesterday. What kind of someone? A woman, mid-40s, kind of desperate looking. She wanted to know about your routine when you came in, whether you were dating anyone. What did you tell her? Nothing. Told her it wasn't any of her business. Jenny paused. Should I be worried? Probably not. But if she comes back, call me immediately. That evening, I drove past the motel where Naomi was staying. Her rental car was in the parking lot, but I didn't see her. I made a mental note to vary my routine for the next few weeks. The harassment continued for a month. Phone calls at all hours, letters slipped under my door, surprise visits to my rental properties. Naomi seemed to believe that persistence would eventually wear down my resolve. She was wrong. Finally, she crossed a line. I came home from work to find her sitting in my kitchen, having somehow gotten inside despite the new locks. We need to talk, she said, and you need to leave. Now. Not until you listen to what I have to say. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. But first, let me ask you something. Do you really think you're better than me? I paused, finger hovering over the emergency number. What? You think you're so righteous, so moral, but you destroyed my life just as thoroughly as I destroyed yours. I exposed your crimes. That's not the same thing. Isn't it? You could have confronted me, filed for divorce, moved on with your life. Instead, you chose to systematically destroy everything I cared about. Everything you cared about was built on lies and theft. And what you did wasn't revenge. I looked at her sitting at my kitchen table, still beautiful, despite everything. Still believing she could manipulate her way back into my life. You're right, I said finally. It was revenge. Cold, calculated, complete revenge. She smiled, thinking she'd scored a point. So we're both guilty. The difference is I only destroyed things that deserved to be destroyed. You destroyed something that was real. Our marriage was real. Our marriage was a performance. You played the role of a loving wife while stealing from me and sleeping with another man. When it became inconvenient, you threw it away. And now you're throwing me away. I'm not throwing you away, Naomi. You threw yourself away a long time ago. I'm just refusing to catch you. She stood up, her face hardening. You think you've won. You think you've gotten your perfect revenge? I think I've gotten justice. Justice, she laughed bitterly. You want to know what justice looks like? Justice is me telling everyone in this town exactly what kind of man you really are. Justice is making sure no one ever trusts you again. Go ahead. Tell them I discovered my wife was a thief and a liar and did something about it. See how much sympathy you get? I'll tell them you're a sociopath who destroyed 2 people's lives for fun. And I'll show them the bank records, the forged signatures, the evidence of your affair. We'll see which story people believe. She stared at me with pure hatred. You son of a witch. Get out of my house, Naomi. Don't come back. For a moment, I thought she might try to hit me. Her hands clenched into fists. Her breathing became rapid and shallow. But then something shifted in her expression. Not acceptance, but calculation. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "Yes, it is." She walked to the door, then turned back. "I hope you're happy with your empty house and your empty life. I hope it was worth it." After she left, I changed the locks again and installed a security system. Then I called Detective Martinez and filed a formal complaint about the harassment. 2 weeks later, Naomi was arrested for violating her parole conditions. Apparently, she'd been using false identification to apply for jobs, and the background checks had flagged her criminal record. She was sent back to federal prison to complete her original sentence. I never saw her again. 6 months after that, Jenny and I moved in together. She'd finished her nursing program and gotten a job at the county hospital. Her daughter, Amy, was smart and funny and seemed to like me well enough. We bought a house together, a small place near the good school district, with a yard big enough for Amy to play in. I kept my rental properties, but we built our life around simpler things: family dinners, homework help, weekend trips to the lake. One evening, while Jenny was working a late shift and Amy was at a sleepover, I sat in our living room reading property reports. The phone rang. "Is this Evan Colby?" "Yes." "This is Warden Patricia Collins from the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury. I'm calling about your ex-wife, Naomi Colby." My blood went cold. "Is she hurt?" "Mr. Colby, I'm sorry to inform you that Miss Colby was found dead in her cell this morning. Apparent suicide." I set down my papers and closed my eyes. "I see. She left a letter. It's addressed to you. Would you like us to forward it?" "No. Destroy it." "Are you sure?" "Sometimes these letters provide closure." "I'm sure. Is there anything else?" "We'll need to discuss arrangements for the body. She listed you as next of kin." "I'm not her next of kin anymore." "Try her sister in Denver." After I hung up, I sat in the quiet house for a long time, processing the news. I felt sad, not for Naomi, but for the waste of it all. The destruction, the years lost, the potential squandered. But I didn't feel guilty. Jenny came home at midnight and found me still sitting in the dark. "Everything okay?" "Naomi's dead. Suicide." She sat down beside me, taking my hand. "I'm sorry." "Are you?" "For you, yes. Even after everything that happened, she was part of your life for a long time." I squeezed her hand. "I don't think I loved her for the last few years of our marriage. I think I just loved the idea of being the kind of man who honored his commitments. And now? Now I love you and Amy and this life we're building together. No regrets." I thought about it honestly. About the choices I'd made, the plans I'd executed, the consequences that had followed. None whatsoever. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of pancakes and coffee. Amy was at the kitchen table doing homework, and Jenny was making breakfast before her day shift. "Morning, sleepyhead," Jenny said, kissing my cheek. "You okay?" "I'm good." And I was. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be, with people who valued me for who I really was, instead of what I could provide. After breakfast, I drove to the diner out of habit. The new waitress, Maria, brought me coffee and asked if I wanted my usual. "Actually, make it to go today. I've got places to be." I had 3 properties to check on, 2 potential purchases to evaluate, and a family dinner to plan. Real problems, real responsibilities, real life. As I walked to my car, I thought about the man I'd been 3 years ago. Passive, invisible, taken for granted. That man had died the night he overheard his wife calling another man babe in a hospital hallway. What had risen from his ashes was someone harder, colder, more calculating. Someone who understood that respect wasn't given, it was taken. Someone who knew the difference between justice and mercy and chose justice every time. I drove through the city I'd helped build, past the properties I now owned, toward the home where people were waiting for me. The morning sun reflected off my windshield, warm and bright and full of promise. At a red light, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw a stranger looking back at me. Someone I barely recognized but completely understood. Someone who'd learned that the best revenge wasn't getting mad, it was getting even. The end.